Curing Racism. I am your host, Paz Simpson, a happiness engineer, along with my co host, Mr. Paul Hoyt. Together, we come every week as a unit to cure racism, where we are currently examining your commonly accepted beliefs, which leads to unfortunate behavioral biases. So, Paul, how are you again, my brother, this week?
I'm doing really, really good this week. You know, all
Yep.
this, all this 60 years of inner work is really starting to pay off. So, what,
Yeah.
yeah, and I always encourage people, especially young people, start early. Practice shifting your energy, practice letting go of your tension and stress, practice remembering who you are when you are at your best. And just do your best every day to be at your best. Make your best self your very best friend. And, as your life goes on, you'll be healthier and happier and just have a much better life experience. A big part of that is being able to gain wisdom, which is what Paz and I always talk about here. Today, we're going to talk about in group biases and tribal instincts, which I'm very excited about. I really believe that when we understand our genetic predisposition, our instincts to form in teams and group together and unfortunately fight each other, that we'll understand the causes and the cures to racism much better.
And I love that. And I think um you've had some great examples of other groups or other things that come, because I think a lot of times when we talk about in-group bias and we talk about commonly accepted beliefs, people only think about racism.
Yeah.
But there are all kinds of groups and biases that causes division along humanity. So I thought that you had some great examples to show people, some less harsh, you know, and some a little bit more real for us to, really hang on to.
I love it. And I want to start with talking about sports because that's the obvious example of in group bias and team behavior. Michigan won the NCAA basketball tournament last Monday night, and there were a whole bunch of people there cheering for Michigan and a whole bunch of people there cheering for Connecticut. Um, and it was obvious that people just joined together in a team. When I decided to go to a college, all of a sudden, I'm a sports fan of that college's team. I know me personally, I'm a Fairweather fan. When I lived in Kansas, I was a Kansas City Chiefs fan. When I lived in Texas, I was a Dallas Cowboys fan. When I lived in Denver, I was a Broncos fan. And now that I'm in the Bay Area of California, I'm a 49ers fan. So it's just my instinct, to root for the team that I feel a part of. And we see that, starting with little leagues and starting with, football teams in the elementary school and junior high school and cliques in high school. And you got in high school, you got the jocks and the nerds is a great example of how people form together into teams because we feel more comfortable, we feel supported, we feel stronger, we feel safer when we're in community with other people. Now, Paz here is an interesting example of that because he was both a nerd and a jock and got to be in both of that groups. Talk to me a little bit about that, Paz.
Oh man. And it's funny because being in, a world class athlete before ripping my knees up, it definitely had me allowed to not only work with the jocks, but thrive around the jocks, right? Because I was usually a little bit more athletic than they were, playing basketball being my main sport, but also, getting a bronze medal in swimming, and also, playing soccer, being my family from the islands. But I'm also the grandchild of a very, very smart man. My grandfather was one of the first black men to drive a train in New York City prior to segregation. So book smarts came very easy to me, right? I tell people, go ahead.
Your microphone was kind of fading out there for just a little bit. I didn't know if you were moving your phone or not,
No
but
problem. Can you hear
it's,
me better now?
yeah, just came back. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, my grandfather was one of the first black men to drive a train prior to segregation ending, in New York City. So, being that you he was an engineer at such a uh trying time, like being book smart became easy. But I also grew up in New York City, in Harlem. So I still remember my eighth grade teacher asking me, how do I get to beat up all the nerds when I'm the biggest nerd in school? And I had to remind her, I have to walk through three projects to get home. No one cares how smart I am once the doors close. They need to know I can defend myself.
Wow. Wow. And you grew up in a society that was filled with teams, with
Yeah.
groups who your opposing teams and fought each other and maybe even hated each other. That was some of your early life experiences. That is for sure.
But I was also blessed, right, to be my early life experience. I got to sit in through the gang truce, the original gang truce in New York. So before the Bloods and the Crips invaded New York City, all the gangs were gone,
Mm.
and I got to see what it looked like for not only groups to disband, but to reconnect over something more positive. Like most of us were already good basketball players and had something else that we were looking forward to. Out of that became you had some famous rappers came out of that out of Harlem, Cameron and Mace, so there were as much as there were reasons for us to band together for the wrong reasons, right? We also banded together for the right reasons. If you look through Harlem, like you won't see as well. I can't say that now. Harlem in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot less racial tension amongst us because the blacks, the Latinos, that all lived together, right? We all struggled together. We all suffered together. So, our plights were the same. So was our acceptance, right? Um, I live in a city where a Latino man was ostracized for calling someone the N word. And I had to remind them he grew up in New York. And they're like, what does that mean? That means if he grew up in New York as a Latino man, especially if he grew up in Harlem, Brooklyn, or the Bronx. They use the N word just like we do because they're all going through the same struggle.
Yeah.
But when you go into different cities, right, those struggles may not be recognized the same. So new biases start to form.
Yeah. So I have this theory that we're all members of many, many different groups. It's not just celebrating our favorite basketball team, baseball team, football team, but many, many other groups that we come together. Sometimes it's, in a department at the job that you have, or, some class that you're in at school. But there are so many different groups that we are members of that I think we kind of lose track of our in-group bias and our tribal instinct. So I would love to challenge people who are listening to this podcast to just sit down for a few minutes and make a list of all of the groups in which you consider yourself to be a member. Your church, your work, your department at your work, maybe your little project team at your work, your family, your extended family, your community, your neighborhood, and look at all of those teams and see your racial group or your ethnic group as just one of dozens of other teams or groups that you are a member of. And when you look at all of the other members of all of those groups, what you're going to find is an incredible diversity among them. And when you see that diversity, I want you to think about our primary admonition here within the Curing Racism community, which is that when you learn to see through the superficial differences that divide us, you will discover the common values that unite us. The color of our skin, our ethnic background, is a superficial difference. Recognize that, own that, understand that, and live that, and this world will be a much, much better place.
I agree with you 1,000% there. If we can all own, right, the many groups that we're connected to, sports, I guess, is a great example. I am a Laker fan. I'm a New Yorker that doesn't like most New York teams. I am a I am a Laker fan. I'm a Chicago Bears fan. The only New York teams that I cheer for are the New York Yankees and the New York Rangers. So growing up in New York, I was ostracized for being a Laker fan, especially in the heart of New York. You know, being a Chicago Bears fan, anywhere outside of Chicago, and you're definitely ostracized. But, what I say about those groups, what those groups allow us to do is they become a part of your personality. We were, me and you were talking about how when those groups go unchecked, how things can go awry. You know, Philadelphia Eagles fans know what I'm talking about because it can get really crazy if you go to an Eagles game and you're not an Eagles fan. One year, the Philadelphia Eagles fans beat up a Philadelphia 76er who played for the basketball team because he was cheering for his home team that he grew up with. So the violence didn't him playing for one of the teams in the city didn't prevent him for being violently attacked for not cheering for another team in the city.
Let's talk about that for a second, because one of the great things about our tribal instinct is that we can come together and get great things done and cheer for our team and have a lot of fun and feel safe in our community. But there's a huge downside to this in-group bias as well. And that is when we allow our group to be hijacked by a leader who points to another group and says that those are our enemies. We must fight them. We must destroy them. One of the common things that they do is they try to dehumanize members of those other community. They call them vermin and cockroaches and rats and scumbags. And they want you to think that every member of that other tribe, every member of that other community is your mortal enemy and needs to be destroyed. And we don't have to look very far around the world today for leaders who want to push up, who advance their own interests and their own power by getting us to fight against members of a different tribe. But the truth is that 95%, 98% of those members of that other tribe are good people just like you. But unfortunately, the tribe has been hijacked by powerful people who, for their own self-interest, want to leverage the power of their community to fight other people. So we can't let that happen. We can't let our leaders say that all of them goddamn Democrats need to die, or all of those Republicans are vermin and cockroaches, or even all of those people in Iran need to be erased. Don't let that happen. Don't believe it. There are good people everywhere, good people in every tribe, good people in every society. And unfortunately, our leaders hijack those to their own self-interest way too often.
I agree. I think that's how we have something like the Holocaust, right? Where a man who wasn't even blonde hair or blue eyed can say that all blonde hair, blue eyed people are the superior race and get people to, you know, get behind that. There are always going to be reasons, right, to separate and divide, but there are also going to be better reasons for us to work together to create a better society. If we actually take the time and pay attention, right, to what is beneficial to all of us, you will see that more of us can win together.
I love that. And that, by the way, is a great message that Paz and I want to bring to your community, to your organization, through our good power, excuse me, through our curing racism workshops. Um, to help people recognize both the benefits and the dangers in that in-group bias, and give them a little more encouragement to see through those superficial differences, so that you and your organization and your community can leverage all of the talent, all of the goodwill, all of the great ideas from people, no matter who they or what they look like.
There's a greatness in each and every one of us, but we may miss that greatness by looking at them through biased eyes. One of the quotes from my book, you know, that I live by is, you cannot see the gift looking through ungrateful eyes. So we may miss the gift of who Paul is or the people Paul are connected to because we're ungrateful for our connection because Paul doesn't have as much chocolate in his skin as I do. Or Paul's group may not like me because I'm more milk chocolatey than he is, you know. So whatever it is that forces you to not see the greatness in others, take the time to take a step back and remind yourself that we are all God's reflections. No matter what size, shape, no matter what color, no matter what height, no matter what nationality, we are all right made in the image of God. So let's now see God's greatness in each and every one of us.
Well said, my friend. Very, very, very well said. And I'm glad that you accept me, even though I'm white and I can't play basketball worth a damn.
you know. But hey, we we can smile together and laugh together. Not everything, and like we say here, right? We'll find more commonalities than we will find differences.
Amen to
So
that.
if a little black man from Harlem can fall in love with a little white man from Kansas, and call him his brother, what can one of you do by just reaching out and saying, "Hey, hello, my name is," and
I love
allow
it.
that conversation to go from there.
I love it. As we like to say, one conversation, one connection, one heart at a time. And we
Yes,
hope that
sir.
we helped you see through your biases and help you discover the joy in finding great people who don't look like you, talk like you, dress like you, or maybe even think like you. Because there is great joy when we can find the goodness in each other, regardless of those superficial differences.
Yes. And if you want to be able to learn how to make a difference in your community, in your city, maybe just in your home, go to curingracism.com, get your copy of the book so that you can start to learn some real things. Go back and feel free to watch any of the past episodes that we've done. Send an email to myself or Paul and let us know, not only do you want to buy a book, read a book, but you also want to make a difference. Or if you want us to come to your office, your community, your city, send us an email. We'll be glad to share a smile, spread some love, and really begin curing racism with.
Awesome. Great to speak with you as always, Paz. God bless each and every one of you. We look forward to our next conversation.
Until next week, remember, that there are more reasons for us to love each other than there are for us to be separated.
Amen.